In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you about MS MRIs, the 5 best tips to release stress and anxiety when you have an MRI scan. So before I get into the 5 tips, the 5 C's, I'm Jen DeTracey, and I'm the founder of Women Thriving with MS. This is the Women Thriving with MS YouTube channel. So be sure to press subscribe and hit that bell so you can get the notifications on future videos from this channel. And check out the goodness below and see the links, the link to the Women Thriving with MS website, the Facebook page, and the waitlist for the We Thrive membership. So before I get into the 5 C's of managing stress and anxiety, maybe claustrophobia, panic of experiencing an MRI when you live with multiple sclerosis, I want to lay the foundation first. First of all, it is normal to have anxiety. If you are possibly going to be considered diagnosed with MS and you're having that MRI for the first time to see what's happening, and then you Google and you look up about MRIs and then you start, oh my God, I'm going to go into a tunnel, it's going to be horrible. And then you've got the layer of fear of the possibility of living with MS. That can be really scary. Or you could be a seasoned person that lives with MS that is having regular scans. I have been living with MS for over 11 years. I was diagnosed after I came back from a 3-day speaking tour. I was at the peak of my career, and then while I was on that tour, my hand stopped working. I had difficulty writing. My foot started dragging when I was running, and my mouth started to droop. Not a great way to end a speaking tour. Not a great way to be in that part of my life. And then having to deal with the diagnosis along with MRI. So there can be lots of layers of stress. So you are not alone if you live with MS and you're going through this and you're totally freaked out or claustrophobic about going through having an MRI process and getting the results. For me, I want to tell you, the first time I had an MRI, it wasn't anything. I was probably totally out of it. Number one, I was waiting to hear back. I didn't even know the neurologist had done a CT scan. She had told me that I had brain inflammation and that we needed to get it down, but she wanted to do an MRI to verify that process. I didn't know anything about MRIs. I was admitted to the hospital. I had been in emergency, and then I went into the actual hospital as a patient, and I waited until someone came and got me the next day and took me into the MRI. They probably gave me sedatives, I believe, and then I waited a little bit, and then I had the process, and then it was done. It happened so fast, I didn't even have time to think about it. That was the first time I had an MRI, but the second time, now I'm out of the hospital, it's 6 months later, I'm feeling anxious, I'm afraid, and I know I'm claustrophobic, and there's all these scary thoughts happening in my head. So now I have to face it. Now, maybe you can relate to that too. Maybe you didn't have fear the first time because you were in that same kind of state as me. You didn't know anything about it and you didn't have that anxiety. And then now you've got anxiety. Well, what I'm going to share with you today in these 5 tips, which are the 5 C's, is what I did. I'm going to walk you through every single step. Know that if I can do this and I live with claustrophobia, that fear of being in small spaces, that anxiety of being in a contained, closed space, then you can do this too. I'm confident that you can do this too. So let me walk you through that process, starting with the first C. The first C is all about comfort. When you get introduced to an MRI machine, and I'm just going to fix my glasses because they are a little crooked today. It might not be perfect, just so you know. But anyway, that's how it is. I need to get them corrected. There we go. You're going to be laying on a bed that goes into the MRI machine. Now, depending on where you live, what country you live in, and what access you have to MRIs, will depend on whether that scanner, that MRI scanner, is open or closed. In most cases, I've only experienced closed MRI scanners. So there's that high level of claustrophobia as you're going in there, and there's only so much space between you and the top of the scanner. In Canada, the government pays for you to receive MRIs if deemed important by a neurologist or other specialist or doctor. However, they're not private, and so unless you want to shell out the bucks for the open MRI in Canada, you're not going to get that. So you want to be comfortable. You're going to be laying on a hard bed. So what's nice is if they can put down a blanket, which usually in my experience has happened every single time. And then they put a wedge, it's kind of like a yoga wedge, where you have your knees bent over it. And that's great because it pushes your back down so that you can be comfortable but still, and also feels better for your legs. The other thing around comfort that they're going to do for you is they're going to put a plastic cage on. At least this is my experience. Maybe that's not how it is depending on the machine you're using and in your particular circumstance. Then they will put earplugs in and headphones on. Now, in terms of comfort, you may have the opportunity to listen to music while you are experiencing your MRI, and you may even have the choice of music that you listen to. That has never been an option for me. Personally, because I have been able to calm myself and reduce that stress and anxiety and eliminate that claustrophobic state of being, I don't need the music. But it is a nice to have if you want it, and I encourage that if that's an option for you and that is what you feel inclined to do. The other part of comfort is sedation. I used to take Ativan as a way to calm myself, and you can ask your doctor or neurologist for a prescription. You'll take it 30 minutes before, and that will calm your nervous system and make the MRI a more pleasant experience. However, when I take you through this 5-step process, these 5 tips, you might not need to at a certain point take Ativan or a sedative any longer. It might not be necessary. I have not taken Ativan for MRIs in probably 9 years. So in the first 2 years I did, and after that I mastered this process, which you can master too, and I don't take sedatives anymore. Now the benefit of that is that if you can't have someone there with you, then not taking a sedative is essential, because otherwise you need someone to be there to take you home. So that is one of the benefits of not taking sedatives. So number 1 is comfort, very, very important. Number 2 is communication. The MRI technician has 2 roles. Think of yourself as going on a trip and you're on an airplane. There's the pilot that is in control of the plane. That's the machine, like the MRI, is in control of that machine, exactly in charge of what it does. Then you've got number 2, the flight attendant. They're there to keep you comfortable, make sure that you are relaxed, that you're safe. Well, the MRI technician, it used to be there was 2 technicians. Now, in my experience, there's only 1 technician, and they are the pilot and the flight attendant. And that is a good thing in a sense, because you have the same point person the whole time that you are going through this process. And communication with that technician is very important. It is so important to have your voice. And if you have worries that come up for you, then you want to tell them right away, especially if it's your first time. They will usually ask you that. And one of the key things that I've noticed is that when I go for an MRI, they usually tell me how long each scan is going to be. And that is done, you hear it through your headphones, And they have an ability to turn off and on a mic to communicate with you. They give you this squeeze ball, and you can use that to notify them, and they will put on the microphone so you can talk to them. So know that you're not alone in this scanner. You have that pilot, that flight attendant with you to support you in this journey. So important. So when you are told, we're going to start now, the first scan is 5 minutes, we're going to do your neck, then the next, then after that one, there'll be a short break, and then they'll say it's 2 minutes or whatever length of time, and they'll go through that whole process with you. I have found that to be very calming. And they usually check in with you after the first scan. How are you doing? Is everything okay? You say yes, and then they'll start with the next one and just say, okay, 7 minutes, 9 minutes, so on and so forth. So that can be very helpful. Once I didn't have this. I had someone do an MRI with me, and they didn't go through that process, and I found that my anxiety rose because that is what I was used to. I was used to that. And when I didn't have it, I realized it didn't work. So from that time on, I made sure that they were going to do that. And that's something you can ask, especially if you haven't been to an MRI before, or if you have and that hasn't happened, then know that that is an option for you. And I have found that to be very helpful. So that's number 2. So number 1 was being comfortable and all the attributes of that. Number 2 is communication. Number three is cover. That's the third C. What do I mean? I mean, cover your eyes. So in some cases, even though they put this plastic mounting on your head, the possibility is that you don't necessarily have a cover on your eyes. So ask for a Kleenex or a towel that they can cover up your eye. When you are claustrophobic, and you open your eyes, it can be very traumatic. That can speed up your heart rate, it can speed up your blood pressure, it can make you very uncomfortable, it can cause panic. So you want to not be able to see what's happening. So cover up your eyes. It makes a huge difference. That's number 3. It's that simple. Just ask them, you want to cover your eyes. If you are a person that needs to see and that gives you reassurance, well, then that's a totally different story. Now we've got number 4. Number 4 is about connection. When you are in the MRI machine, you will notice that there are 2 distinct sounds. And they're both very loud, which is why they give you the earplugs and the headphones. So if you're listening to music, it's going to compete with those sounds. So that's not ideal. So that's one reason I don't like the music, but it hasn't been an option for me, so it doesn't matter. The sounds are as follows from my experience. Number 1, you hear something that's like a construction zone. It's like jackhammering. It's like a kind of sound, right? And then there's the sound that's like a ka-chunk, 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 which is kind of like a beat. And I associate that one with music, with the sound of this musical sound, like I'm in a discotheque, like I'm dancing in a nightclub. And so when I started to notice that those sounds were pretty consistent, so every time they say you've got 5 minutes or however long that is, and then you'll start to hear a ka-chunk or that sound of construction sound, you'll know that they're in the process of doing it. And what I learned to do is connect those sounds with a positive experience, going into a positive, enjoyable state. So let me give you a couple of examples of that. So because I was noticing the sounds reminded me of being in a nightclub, it took me back to when I used to, in my late teens and into my early 20s, go dancing a lot. That brought me so much joy to be able to do that. And so I would imagine myself dancing. I'd take myself back to that enjoyable time in my life, and I would really feel that physically through my body. It's a mind thing. I'm taking myself there in my mind. So I want you to think about a time in your life, ideally earlier in your life, because the early memories are really wired in. Let me give an example of why that's true. Is if you think back to a time in your life early on, so it could be all the way up to your teens, where you listened to a song and it brought a happy memory to you. Maybe you heard something over a song on the radio. That music is wired, that memory is wired into our system, and it's about pleasure, enjoyment. And the same is true when we have something that is a physical experience that we enjoy. So if you can think about what that physical experience might be for you, maybe you go back in time to your early days before MS, ideally, because that's where those memories from the early days as well as before MS, we have something, a positive experience around it. So think about that. Maybe it was tennis or swimming or hopscotch. What else could there be? Basketball, or it could be water skiing, or snowshoeing, or skiing, or just even taking a lovely walk near a beautiful stream that's so calm, whatever that might be. It can be just something, you want to equate something physical with it if possible in this case, because then there's a body memory from it. And then as soon as the sounds kick in from the MRI, you want to take yourself to that place and start re-experiencing it. And the beauty with MRIs now is that technology has advanced so much that what used to be a 45-minute MRI for me, for my brain and my neck, is now only a 15-minute experience. So that is amazing that the time has been shortened in terms of technology. And I'm super happy about that. So when I can take myself back into that state of dancing and hearing the sounds of the machine, it really right away calms my nervous system. It strips away the stress and anxiety, and I'm not thinking about being claustrophobic. I'm thinking about this great experience that I had, and I'm associating it with this sound. So that is step number 4. And Sandy attended this coaching series that I ran called the MS Stress Release Process. And at the end, we did a Q&A and we just had a chat. And she mentioned to me that she was just about to go for an MRI. It was going to be a full MRI, and she was very nervous. So I asked her, what is the thing physically that has been a positive connection for you? And she said swimming. She loved to swim. In fact, she had an up-ground pool presently, and she would swim in that, and that was very relaxing for her. So I recommended to her that she practice that, and then when she went to the MRI, tap into that experience. Unfortunately, she was able to get a more of an open scanner MRI and practice her swimming, or imagine herself swimming. And she said it really made a difference. So pick that physical activity from your past, possibly from your early days before you're 20, where you had a positive experience, associate it with the sound of the MRI and notice what happens. I have not needed to take Ativan since I connected into this state of being. Such an amazing thing. And then add to that, step number 5, which I'll come back to in a minute. So first of all, we did the first C was comfort. The second C was communication. So before I go to the 5th C, let's just do review. The first C is comfort, being physically comfortable. The second C is communication with the tech person, your pilot, your flight attendant. The third C is cover your eyes. The 4th C is connection, connecting to the sound and going into that state. And the 5th C is calm. So you're probably already feeling calmer after you've gone through all those steps, but the last step is around the breath. Breath is very powerful because it sends a message to the body, the brain. Let's just say this is a brain, and this is the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that always asking this question every 3 to 4 seconds. Am I safe? Do I matter? Am I safe? Do I matter? And when the amygdala is tucked away in the brain and there isn't stress or you're not triggered, it's covered by the prefrontal cortex. But when we're in that trigger state, it's kind of, we flip our lid per se, metaphorically, and the amygdala gets activated. So when we are breathing, and we're breathing in and out into the body consciously in a nice slow way, we can calm the nervous system, and the amygdala starts to believe that it is safe and that it does matter. So when we take ourselves into the fourth C, which is that place of connecting with the sound of the machine and going to that state, that calms the amygdala. And then on top of it, having the breath. I like to recommend, and this is what I do, not big long breaths, because you don't want to move too much in the MRI. You want to keep your body as still as possible. So nice slow breaths, 3 counts in and 3 counts out through the nose. So let me do that. So 3 in, 3 out through the nose. So not big, long breaths, just short ones, ones that you can keep track of. So once you're visualizing yourself in that state, whether it's swimming or dancing or whatever that is for you, then you're focusing on the breath. 3 in through the nose, 3 counts in, 3 counts out. So the combination of the breath and the visualization going into that state really release that stress, that anxiety, that panic, that fear. The key is that we want to avoid swallowing when they're doing that part of the spine, which is around the neck. And so those breaths in through your nose, as opposed to in through your mouth and moving around in this area, like, you don't want to be doing that. You want nice, slow, calm, easy breaths in and out. Now, they're going to tell you, don't swallow at certain points. And when people tell you not to swallow, what do? You swallow. Not good, right? So what you want to do is know that you are going to need to swallow. Be conscious of that. And I recommend that when you're breathing, when they stop, when they say 5 minutes and that stops, or the next block of 7 minutes or 2 minutes, take a moment just to have a nice little swallow. Get rid of that saliva in that period of time, and then go back to the breath and imagining yourself in that state. And that will take care of your physical need to swallow all that saliva down, but not have a negative impact on the results of the scan, because the more you move around, the less effective the results are. So as a wrap up today, we did the 5 C's, we talked about comfort, we talked about communication, we talked about covering your eyes, we've talked about connection to the sound and getting into that state, and calm through breathing gently 3 times in and out. So before we part ways today, I want to thank you for watching this video. Let me know how it goes. Share with me any other comments or advice that you have from your experience. And if you're doing it for a first time, I hope this prepares you well for going through that process. This is a great way to build confidence and calm by following all 5 steps. If you haven't subscribed to the Women Thriving with MS YouTube channel, be sure to click that subscribe button, click the bell so that you get notifications, and check out all the links below. I'm Jen DeTracey from Women Thriving with MS. Thank you for joining me today, and I will see you soon.